Welcome to episode 610 of the I Hate Critics Movie Review Podcast. I'm the executive producer, Bob Zerl, and before the show starts, I want to remind you to check us out on Facebook, X, Instagram, all your podcatchers. Our handle is Critics Pod, or at Facebook, it's I Hate Critics. Be sure to check out the 1994 I Hate Critics group on Facebook as well. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Alexa, all your podcatchers. Subscribe to the show, rate and review the show. If you go to Apple Podcast and write a review, they'll read the review on the air. The best way to help support the podcast is heading over to Patreon, patreon.com/criticspod. Our TeePublic link is over at ihatecritics.net up in the right-hand corner, or you can search Critics Pod over at TeePublic. We're also on YouTube, the I Hate Critics Movie Review Podcast, possibly even the Everyone's a Critic Movie Review Podcast. Subscribe there, hit the little notification to be reminded when a new episode drops. And I'm going to hand it over to professional film critics Sean Patrick and Jeff Lasseter. Thanks.
Welcome to the I Hate Critics Movie Review Podcast. I am professional film critic Sean Patrick. With me is Jeff.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Jeff, where do they find your stuff?
JeffLassiter.com is my my website, and you should go there and buy stuff. I just put up a limited edition, limited to 25, and I think I've sold half of them. Print from the Madonna Celebration Tour.
Nice.
So yeah,
that was gorgeous.
Thank you.
That was a gorgeous piece.
Yeah, it's on our Facebook page.
I saw it on your page, and I was like, I'm going to put that up on our Facebook page so everybody can see that, because it's an incredible piece.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Like I said last time, she sang This Used to Be My Playground from A League of Their Own, which is such a great movie, and she was great in it. And she'd never done that before, so I was kind of like wanted to commemorate that. Or if you read my Twitter, it's commentate that, because I forgot to fix the spelling.
So. It happens. It happens to us all.
Yeah.
All right. Recently, both of us had the chance to see a brand new movie theater in our area, and it's notable because it's owned and operated by a pair of Hollywood filmmakers, well-known Hollywood filmmakers. The guys behind the script for A Quiet Place, and they directed Haunt and 65 with Adam Driver, Beck and Woods. They've got their own movie theater in downtown Davenport, Iowa, and we've both had a chance to see it. I saw it last week. And I saw the incredible Francis Ford Coppola movie, One from the Heart, which is this amazing, monstrous fiasco from 1982 that I absolutely loved, Jeff. I loved this movie. It's so insane and over the top and weird and experimental, and it's all just a guy who is truly coming from the heart. He's laying everything bare. It's like everything you don't tell people about yourself, like in regular conversation, made into a movie. Like it's his fetish material, but also like his love of, like, he's like really going on about his love of legendary, MGM style musicals, and and of course just his fetishization of movie technology. It's incredible, and I loved it.
Good.
I
have not actually seen it.
It's been hard to find for the past, almost 40 years now, 42 years now. It's been a hard movie to find, because it was, again, the reputation of it is this massive fiasco. It cost about $25 million and made like $2. Like, it was not. It nearly put Zoetrope, his company, in the ground. Like, it was bad in terms of the business stuff, but in terms of filmmaking, it is so wildly experimental and unique and different. And just a straight expression right from the spirit of Francis Ford Coppola and everything that he loves.
Yeah, I need to come into some money so I can just go to the movies all the time, because that's stuff that I never get to see because I work mostly nights, and I would love to. I used to do that a lot in Chicago, is go to, just whatever they were showing at the Music Box Theater. So
I love the fact that we now have an art house in our area, and they're going to be doing stuff like this. Like this is a recent restoration of One from the Heart that just happened fairly recently. They first was released back in mid-January, and they were able to bring it to us because we have this amazing art house now.
Yeah. This is something that I have wanted since I moved back here. Having lived in LA for the year that was lost from the pandemic, 2020 into 2021, I never got to go experience like the New Beverly and things like that I wanted to. I mean, I'd been to a couple of theaters when I was on vacation there, but that was what I wanted to do out there. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that we have something that's, that's kind of ramping up to that here.
Absolutely. Now, you had a chance to see it today, and it's a spectacular, incredible posters, and you got to see the new movie Origin.
Yes, I did. So Origin is based on the process of writing the book Cast. And I actually have that book. I picked it up recently without knowing that this movie existed. And about halfway through the movie, I said, you know what, I'm in the middle of 3 books, but that's the book that's coming next.
Yeah.
Just everything, like the performances in this were just amazing. Like Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor I completely lost who she was. She was Isabel Wilkerson, just her, and the chemistry with her and Jon Bernthal was off the charts. Of course, it opens up with the murder of Trayvon Martin. And that was kind of the catalyst for her writing this, is they wanted her to do a story because she writes a lot about subjects like that. And the fact that she couldn't quite put her finger on where to start with that story because it was so devastating to her. And it just brought up this whole other experience that she wanted to talk about, which is how not everything is racism, but everything is caste. And if people aren't familiar with the word caste, I would say look it up. And it's basically that the old adage that if you can make somebody beneath you, that enough people start to believe that, then that is, it's like the billionaires telling the millionaires to tell the middle class that the poor people are coming for them. Mm-hmm. And, that they should do everything to simp for billionaires. That kind of thing is like, that's a very broad simplification of it, but it's along the same lines.
Absolutely. What I was thinking is racism truly is, like, at the root of is a caste system where a portion of racism is about seeing somebody who is different from you and discriminating against you. Another part of it is actively creating people who will be at the very bottom of the economic ladder to make sure that everybody else has somebody that they can look down upon, or somebody that can do the jobs that nobody else wants to do. That's really brought home in that powerful sequence in India where the director takes us to India and shows us the caste system there, which is truly horrific. They took a small religious sect and turned them into the absolute bottom of the ladder in terms of the economy, to the point where we watch them cleaning a sewer, and it is horrifying to watch.
Yeah, literally oiling somebody so that they don't absorb the shit that they have to literally be in, like up to their neck and on their head. They are covered in shit in the back of a latrine. It's just, it's mind-boggling how, this and
instead of solving the problem, they continuously, just continue to trash these people and place them in a position where they have no hope and no. They take the worst jobs because that's all that's been made available. Yeah.
And to anybody who says that does not exist anymore, it goes to this day. It's so worth your time to watch the movie. And then I have not read the book yet, like I said, but from everybody that I've talked to who has, it's so worth the read, and it's so eye-opening. So, but definitely this movie, like, I mean, everybody's in this movie. Nick Offerman plays a guy in a Make America Great Again hat, which I know, like, I could just see him just like, oh, let me play that part, because that's who he is. He is just so anti that. Donna Mills was in this movie. I was like, oh, I love Donna Mills. I've loved her for my entire life, and to see her in this movie, not playing a bitch, but just playing a friendly neighbor. Stephanie March from SVU is in this. I was like, yeah, I haven't seen her in a long time. Just all the people. Blair Underwood still looks like he's in his 20s.
And Ava Duvernay is weaving this story of telling how she's, working on this book. Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor is the lead, Isabel Wilkerson, and all that she went through. And not only is she getting this massive thing into the book, which is a massive undertaking. She's weaving in elements of actual losing her husband, losing her closest friend, played by Nisi. All this is underlined incredible woman and all that she's done to get to this point where she's now created this astonishing bestseller that is one of the best books of the last 3.
Yeah, it's just I cannot recommend this enough. It's so good. However you have to see it, if you have to see it at home, I luckily got to see she answered a couple of questions after the movie, just a pre-recorded thing. And there's a story of Al Bright, who was a little boy who was on a little league team. He's the only black child on this team. And they were all going to go have lunch and go eat, or they're going to go eat barbecue and go to the pool. Well, they wouldn't let him in the pool. And the fact that the man telling the story as if he was, if it was he was one of the participants and you weren't quite sure if he was an actor or if he was actually the man, the fact that you can't tell is kind of a testament to both his ability and her movie making, because she weaves this tale in, and it's literally heartbreaking to watch this little child be excluded. And it's a true story. It actually happened. It's just, oh God, I can't recommend it enough. I want to go see it again, and I want to take everybody I know to see it. So
I'm right there with you. This movie is incredible. It's an incredible film, and Ava DuVernay made this movie, and so low under the radar, especially throughout the award season, kind of blew my mind. This is one that belongs higher, and I think part of the problem is that it is kind of experimental in its way. I mean, it's not a linear narrative. It's weaving through various different stories. It's got flashbacks to her meeting her husband, to after he passed away. Stuff happening, and people have called it a little bit shapeless. Who are used to that typical 3-act structure, it can be a little bit hard to not hard to follow, but certainly it's just not what you're trained for as a regular everyday moviegoer. So I get some of that, but truly the overall quality of it is so powerful that it's really undeniable.
Had this been a series on like Hulu, because the tone was like a Hulu in particular miniseries, where you have one episode which is present day and sets up the story, and then the next episode is the flashback to them meeting, and then it had that, but I'm so glad it was a movie. It was just the way it kind of takes you back and forth and shows you how something from the past affected the future, the present, and the future. was really well told. I am going to say this. I am glad that Finn Wittrock did not have a lot of lines because he's not a great actor. I literally, I can't stand him on American Horror Story and all the Ryan Murphy stuff because, it's just whatever. But facially, he was really good. He did a lot of face acting in this, and he was very good at that. But, they tell you, they show you how, a story of a German and a Jew in Nazi Germany affects how things are happening in their future with Isabel Wilkerson and her husband. It's the fact that they're a mixed race couple. It kind of informs how she tells the story.
Absolutely.
Just highly recommended.
Yeah, it's an incredible movie. Everybody needs to see it. It's Origin. It's some theaters, some places, but of course, I bet it'll soon probably be available for streaming very, very soon. I saw a movie this weekend called Out of Darkness, Jeff. It's a horror film set in 65 million BC. It's way back in the era, and it's basically just a monster movie. It reminds of Prey, and there was a point where I thought, oh no, they're going to reveal this is another Predator sequel, because it's literally like the whole premise is this small band of people has been cut off from their tribe, and they're on their own in this somewhere in the English Isles, and one by one they're kind of being picked off by this unseen force, and you're like, oh god, it is Predator. The dynamic has them with there's one young woman who's an outsider, a very, very young woman who's kind of the outsider to the group, and there's talk of potentially using her as a sacrifice. Then they've got the leader and his wife and his brother who are out front. They've got a wise man that they brought along who's a little bit older, who's insightful, and of course is the first one to say, "Sacrifice her."
Wise and insightful.
And once they reveal what the monster truly is, and it definitely it's not a twist. I wasn't terribly surprised by it, but I was impressed by how well it's done. It's got a lot of suspense. It's an exciting film. They really use their outdoor locations and that millions upon millions of years ago setting to great effect. They don't want to go into this very dark forest. They're going to have to go into this very dark forest, and that's where this monster, so to speak, is hiding. And I had very, very low expectations for this, but I was impressed by the filmmaking. I was impressed by the pace. It's only 87 minutes long, and it really uses that time. I recommend it.
Nice. When I heard the title...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, when I heard the title, I thought it was another Scream movie because that's the title of Sidney Prescott's autobiography in Scream 4.
There's a great scene also.
Sorry to bring the whole podcast to a halt, but...
Your knowledge is respected. No, there's this great scene of a guy getting his jaw ripped off. That is it's classic high-end gore. I can't.
Nice.
All right. I also saw it's Float. Yes, Float with Cynthia Erivo. So here's the thing. I saw another movie last week called Drift, and one called Float. And these are the worst possible titles for movies, as far as I'm concerned. These one-word titles that have basically no reference to the movie itself. They're really, I guess on a vague level, Float makes sense, but there are other titles that probably made more sense. Anyway, Cynthia Erivo plays a woman who is from Africa. She's been living in London with her girlfriend for a while and going to school. She went back to Africa to visit her family. There was an uprising, and somehow she woke up in Greece. And she has no money, passport. She's just barely getting by. We watch her sleep in a cave when we first meet her. She's trying to steal food out of eaten food from a restaurant just to have something to eat. She begins doing foot massages on the beach to make a couple bucks just to buy a sandwich. Eventually, she meets a tour guide played by Alia Shawkat, who tries to help her out and kind of break through these defenses, but she's so scared of everyone around her and so damaged by what happened to her back home in Africa that she really seemingly cannot accept any help whatsoever. And that's an interesting internal journey, but this movie isn't structured like that. It's not structured as a character study. It's structured like a typical drama with a typical 3-act drama, and that should have story progression at some point. That should have her revealing things eventually. And if you're going to have a conventional narrative on this, then you need to give us conventional payoffs. And we never learn how she ended up in Greece, from Africa to Greece. We don't know that journey. We don't know why she won't accept help from people who she knows back in England who would seemingly offer to help her. Like there's really, and it's entirely internal. And like I said, if it were just a character study, I think Cynthia Erivo could make that work. But as a conventional narrative, Jeff, it's just so unsatisfying to have this character just not reveal anything over and over again as we watch the same seemingly series of scenes happen with her close to revealing something about herself and then pulling back.
Yeah, that sounds, it sounds like it would be better as a character study where you don't have to really, there's not a narrative, just you're trying to figure stuff out about her, but yeah.
Yeah. It's unfortunately just quite unsatisfying as it's structured. It's a typical narrative applied to something that should be more of an internal character study kind of movie, just something much more experimental, maybe with some voiceover, and maybe don't include a sort of conventional romance angle. They do seem to have, I know Cynthia Erivo's character is gay, and she does have a lot of chemistry with Alia Shawkat's character, but it kind of goes up to the line of them having a relationship and doesn't really cross it. And again, it's just another, we don't get a good answer as to why that doesn't happen.
Yeah, even in a character study, I want to know why. I want to know the why of the character.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need all my questions answered, but something has to get answered. You have to give me something as a payoff.
Well, I don't care what movie I'm watching. I need to know why the lead character is the lead character.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's just, there's no reason, if they don't have a story necessarily that has somewhat of a structure, then it kind of seems like a fool's errand to me.
Yeah, unfortunately, that movie just doesn't work, unfortunately. All right, let's get to the meat of the show. We're going to be talking movies, and specifically, we're starting with the movie Lisa Frankenstein, starring Kathryn Newton and Cole Sprouse. Not an adaptation of the Frankenstein story per se. It uses the name and it uses kind of the monster. Kathryn Newton.
I can tell you something.
Okay.
It hit me why the name is Lisa Frankenstein. As I was going into I'm being completely. Are you familiar with Lisa Frank?
I just listened to a podcast about Lisa Frank not 2 weeks ago.
Okay, Lisa Frank did these neon pink, green, blue designs for Trapper Keepers and things like that in the 80s when this movie takes place. And I was walking into the theater, and you know how at Cinemark theaters they have the name above the in lights, but it's often truncated.
Mm-hmm.
And this one said Lisa Frank, and I was like, that's okay, that makes sense. This is the reason she's named Lisa is for Lisa Frank and reviving a dead guy. So Lisa Frank, Lisa Frankenstein. It did not hit me until that very moment. So, okay, go
The
ahead with
character's
the
actual
plot summary.
name in the movie is Lisa Swallows, but
Which has its own connotations.
It's Kathryn Newton playing Lisa Swallows. She's an outsider. She's an outcast. Her mother was brutally murdered in an axe by an axe murderer. Her father then gets remarried. They move to a new town. She gets a new stepmother played by Carla Gugino in a tremendous villain role. And a new stepsister played by Liza. What is her? I can't. I always do this.
You gotta write down notes.
Because she's so good. Taffy is the character, and she's just absolutely wonderful in this movie, and
it's refreshing.
Refreshing because that character in this narrative, Jeff, is usually the villain. She's usually the one that the protagonist has to overcome, and they totally went a different direction with that. I really enjoyed that. So the bottom line on that is Liza Soberano, thank you, is her name, and she plays Taffy, the sister to Lisa. And like I said, great character. She has a great line early on about the Miss Hawaiian Tropic contest that is one of my favorite laughs in a while. But anyway, Lisa is an outcast. Of course she is, because she likes to hang out in graveyards and sketch graves and make her art that way and not talk to anybody. She has a particular grave that she's really fallen for a man named Frankenstein. And when that grave gets struck by lightning, the man, Mr. Frankenstein, climbs out of his grave and goes looking for his new friend who's been talking with him and conversing with him in the ground. And he finds her and becomes essentially her monster. He helps turn her life around. He turns her into this goth murder chick who suddenly becomes very hot and popular. I was comparing her, Jeff, to a kind of a goth Madonna, like circa like a virgin.
Yeah.
A great look. And this is a really, really funny, dark movie. Diablo Cody did the script for this. Robin Williams' daughter, Zelda, is the director of this movie. It's got a strong look to it. The script is sharp and acidic, and the movie goes to some places that I wasn't expecting. For sure. Cole Sprouse doesn't have much to do. He doesn't really have much dialogue because the character is, he's recovering from being dead. So there's a lot of time for him to, he's got to build back up his strength before actually speaking. So he doesn't speak much, but Lisa does more than enough talking. The movie is hilarious. Diablo Cody does a great job. The look of the film is unique. It doesn't feel like every other 80s remake. And especially the relationship between Lisa and Frankenstein, the creature as they call him in the credits. It's got I called it kind of a combination between Molly Ringwald and Ducky in Pretty in Pink and Winona Ryder and Christian Slater and Heathers. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of a perfect amalgamation, and they really nailed that in terms of that relationship. I loved this movie, Jeff.
I liked this movie. I have a couple quibbles with it, just a couple.
Sure.
One is that it seems like it's missing a couple scenes. She goes from running away. She doesn't realize it's the guy she's been fawning over, the stone bust on top of his grave. She doesn't get that at first when he comes busting through the window, but it's like she does a turn immediately. There's no 1 minute she's screaming and running away, and the next minute she's just like, okay, fine, you can stay. And then my other, and this is a spoiler, so just fast forward for like a minute. When Carla Gugino is telling her that she's going to have her committed, and he kills Carla Gugino, she doesn't freak out. She doesn't have any normal reaction to it. She's just automatically, let's bury the body, instead of, and it just seems like then she's fine with everything that happens. Mm-hmm. She doesn't seem to me to have any sort of remorse or any sort of pause to say, are we doing the right thing? You know, is this guy like, I know he's a dead guy and his tears smell, which, oh my God, was hilarious. Every time she sometimes she bothers me, but in this movie, she was, especially when he would cry or whatever, or bodily fluid would come out, and she's just like, oh my God. And, you know, she'd start to recover. You know how you do if somebody hurts really bad. You start to recover, then you're just like, it hits you and it get in a wave, and you're just, oh, that was awesome. She was amazing with that. I just felt like there was that was my main problem, was that her motivation just seemed to like be missing a scene where she had to question, you know, like a normal human. And I really, this is a heightened kind of Heathers-esque comedy, and I get that. But even in Heathers, you know, you saw Winona Ryder's kind of arc to where she came and then she had regrets. Lisa doesn't seem to have any regrets for anything that happens. My other thing was, it was Chekhov's axe murderer. If you're going to tell me a story about how this girl's mother got murdered by an axe-wielding killer, that is your absolute, like, classic example of the end of the movie. The axe murderer comes and tries to kill her, and then, you know, the creature attacks him and almost gets him, and then she's like, no, then we can be together. So he lets the killer, you know. I mean, that was like that. I kept waiting for that to happen. Or for her just to say, what, my mom wasn't killed by an axe murderer, she died of cancer, or something like that, you know. Something. I had to have some closure to that moment, because it was just too good of a, you know, my mom was killed by an axe murderer and he's coming for me now, and I'm just going to let him have me so that I can be with my love forever. Or that never happened, you know, like, that's just Taffy being dramatic. Either one would have worked for me. I felt like it was missing that natural payoff, you know, of an axe wielding killer, because that's also a big 80s staple, or, you know, slasher movies. So those are my only quibbles. I thought it was really funny. It was, you know, endearing. I have a grudging like of Kathryn Newton now. Not that I ever really hated her. She's just, you know, just something about her. But no, I loved the aesthetic of it. Carla Gugino's just, she was perfect. I mean, she's that. Oh, yeah. And the thing is like, I knew a lady like her in our little small town growing up in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be like, oh my God, and I'm, for my own sake of not getting sued, I'm not going to say her name, but I was like, oh my God, if my mom was alive to see this, she would say, that's blank. Because it was so her. But she was my favorite part of the movie. And did you get a sense that by the end of the movie, Taffy wanted to like marry her stepfather?
I mean, there was an element of that, I guess, like a little bit. I didn't read too much into it, because I really thought that that again, her performance is so strong. It is so necessary to have that character. Yeah. Again, we talked about it before. The trope is that she would be evil and she would be like killed, like she would be the one who dies. But they rewrote that character so brilliantly, and I just thought everything about that character worked. In terms of being likable, funny, kind of sweet, and a little bit sad herself. Sometimes they reveal her depth a little bit as they go along. I loved her finding out about the creature and Lisa being involved with the creature and the murders, and just her look of shock. Lisa is pouring her heart out and thanking her for being a good person, and she just like, you would think that in a lot of ways you would assume that this is going to be a makeup moment, and she's going to support Lisa as she goes off to fight the creature. And no, she's like, fuck this, I'm out of here. I gotta go. She's like, she totally plays the trauma in that moment, which again, not typical of these type of stories. I don't necessarily want to read that into it too much, but I loved that character. I love Taffy. I think she's arguably the best character in the movie.
Oh yeah, it was between her and Carla Gugino. Mm-hmm. I had a hard time putting my finger on who was the best.
And I was also impressed by the way that Kathryn Newton played Lisa, because early on, she's not playing her as a protagonist. She's playing her fully as this hardcore wallflower who has like almost zero main character energy. And she builds towards this main character energy that sort of emerges throughout. And I thought that's such a great way to play this character.
Yeah.
Again, just refreshing. Also, the look of the movie is refreshing. I think Zelda Williams' direction for a first-time feature director is really impressive. She's got a great aesthetic. She's got a good eye for pacing. And she really has a good ear for what Diablo Cody has given her in a script.
I agree. Again, my only quibbles were not seeing the killer again that killed her mom. And just it seemed like the motivation a couple times was just, well, as long as you're here, we might as well kill her. That kind of, we might as well just bury the body instead of, how do I explain this? Because she didn't do anything wrong until that point.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, she was never at fault until that point. And I felt like that was kind of a leap for her to become, in a typical movie like this, she would have been the bad guy.
I did, again, I love going back to things that are great about this movie. Cole Sprouse, the creature wanting various pieces of his body restored and then figuring out how to do that. That builds to a phenomenal visual.
I know where you're going.
I'm not going to spoil it. That's it, but I was not. They caught me off guard with that one. I kind of I saw there's a lot of build. There's the ear. There's the hand. Rule of three is great in comedy.
100% saw that coming. But I thought it was going to happen with somebody else.
By the way, that guy, the kid that Kathryn Newton's character has a crush on, that is Brad Pitt, is it not? That kid is young Brad Pitt. I was blown away.
Yeah, he does have a very strong screen presence, and he's a likable character up until a certain moment.
Another subversion of expectations. I thought his friend, his female friend, was going to get killed for sure.
Oh, I was rooting for it.
She was like the secondary villain to Carla Gugino. I thought for sure we're going to see that girl bite it.
Yeah, I was rooting for that. That was yet another reason to bring back the axe murderer to kill her.
I thought they could. I will say this. I thought they could have underlined early on in the movie. There's this boy who tries to take advantage of Lisa at a party. And I thought they could have underlined that, made him a little bit more villainous before they finished him off. I thought there's just a little bit more that could have been done with that to underline the point, I think, to make it less jarring.
You know what, though? What I got about that was it had almost a promising young woman vibe, where, the nice guy is also the bad guy. The one everybody thinks is so great and wouldn't hurt a fly is actually the one who tries to get on her at a party.
Yeah.
That worked for me. I thought he was a little small for a hand, but at least, a guy like that, they would have probably been better off getting another body part. Just saying.
All right. So yes, I recommend it higher than you do, but we both recommend it.
Yeah. It's fun. It's streamable.
Strong cult potential, I think. I think this one's going to
Yeah.
only grow in people's minds over the years.
And if I saw it again, knowing a little bit, the pacing of the, her turn might not get on me as much, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
All right. Our classic this week is Bride of Frankenstein. We wanted to, keep that female vibe going, obviously, but we're also going to be talking about just our Frankenstein movies in general and takes on the character. And Jeff, first of all, take us through Bride of Frankenstein from your perspective. How often have you seen this, and what do you love about it?
I've seen this several times, and it has recently started to actually hit me that it's a comedy, a really dark comedy. Mm-hmm. And I actually, that hit me after I saw Young Frankenstein again. I was like, wait a minute. This is like, it's almost the same tone as Bride of Frankenstein, with just like a little wilder, so to speak, performance by Gene Wilder, but he's not that much different than Colin Clive in the Frankenstein movies, if you want to be quite honest. Mm-hmm. Bride of Frankenstein it's a sequel, but it's kind of its own thing. And James Whale is one of the reasons. It starts off, it's right after the original, and Una O'Connor, who is also one of the reasons I see this as a comedy are the performances of Una O'Connor, who plays the older woman. She's been in a ton of. She was in The Invisible Man, playing basically the same part, where she's running around screeching like a banshee, and is still amazing. Mm-hmm. And Ernest Thesiger, who plays Dr. Pretorius.
Oh wow, yeah.
I mean,
we could talk about him for hours.
Oh my God, those two together. I wish they'd done something like The Thin Man together. that would have been, or like a Men in Tights version of The Thin Man, as Nick and Nora Charles or something. Just the two of them on screen, every time they're on screen, it's just like breaking off the scenery and dousing it in salad dressing. Ernest Thesiger is he's what Vito Russo called, like one of the sissies. His character is just so over the top and sissified to me that you can't help but notice that I don't know, I guess I never really even looked to see if Ernest Thesiger was gay, but he's playing it as sort of he's got evil twink energy. Which is a thing that I don't know.
Look at TikTok, you'll find it.
Yeah. But he's just this hilariously malevolent force in the Frankenstein story that, Henry Frankenstein has decided that, I made a mistake, and Ernest Thesiger's coming here. Look at my little people. And it's
1935. It's 1935, and they did that effect. These tiny little people running around in his desk. Thesinger's able to pick them up with a little pen and drop them in these little tubes, and it's seamless. It is seamless. It is better than the CGI we see today.
Oh yeah. I just he makes the movie for me. Mm-hmm. Also, the look of Elsa Lanchester as the bride is probably one of the best monsters on screen I've ever seen in my entire life. And I mean that to my heart. She just is one of the most striking creatures ever.
And considering she's on screen with Frankenstein, I mean, the fact that that still stands out against the probably the previous champion of that very aesthetic, that's so impressive.
You know, and you see her, like, the movie opens with Mary Shelley, or I guess at the time she was probably still Mary Wollstonecraft, and she's talking to Lord Byron and Percy Shelley, and tell us a story. And so she tells the story of Frankenstein, and then they segue into the Bride, and she's starting to finally get the recognition she kind of deserves for really writing one of the very first science fiction stories. Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, is really one of the first sci-fi stories ever written as science fiction. When it opens and we start at the end of the last movie, and the creature escapes like they always did in those old movies, or as Annie Wilkes from Misery would have called it, they're cheaters. He didn't get out of the cock-a-doodle windmill. But and it's him. The creature is starting to realize his humanity, or what's left of it. And that's kind of his arc. And that's why at the end, when Praetorius and Frankenstein make the Bride, or the Bride of Frankenstein, so over the top. When they bring her down and she wakes and does that little ballet at the end where she's going from man to man, and then she hates the creature, and he has reclaimed enough of his humanity that he says, "We belong dead," and then proceeds to kill them all. That's really that's the overarching story of this, is that nobody's human until they've gained their humanity.
Yeah, and you're talking about this whole this dark comic vibe that is roiled throughout the entire movie, building to Karloff holding down essentially the strongest dramatic point of the movie, and it just underlines just how important Karloff is to this movie. As little as the creature is able to talk, when he does talk, it matters so much, and Karloff gives it so much meaning that even amidst all of the bleak comedy of this, that moment still rings true.
Yeah.
His heartbreak, just the way he's able to communicate through all that makeup with those eyes is exceptional.
When he says, "She hate me,"
yeah,
that's everything. So yeah, this is my favorite of the Frankenstein movies.
Absolutely, this is the greatest Frankenstein movie of all time. I mean, of all the ones I've seen, nothing touches this aside from the original. That is probably right behind it, but this is the best one.
Oh, definitely 100%.
What is your take on the character? Like, what in terms of the way this character has been used and evolved and changed over the years? Do you have like a version of it other than Bride of Frankenstein that has impressed you?
Well, I mean, the first two of the series, I just recently watched Son of Frankenstein, and it's Karloff's last performance as the creature. And I think that nobody gives it kind of the gravitas that he did.
Right.
Even though if the story of Frankenstein is, an erudite creature who talks of, why is man this way? Why must you make me? That kind of thing. Whereas, the movies are always, well, he's just a dumb creature until you get to, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein with Robert De Niro and all that. And then it's taken a little more from the book. But I think we get to a point where if you're not the movie version of Frankenstein is what everybody thinks of. They don't think of the book where he, has long yearning conversations with Henry Frankenstein. It has more to do with the grunting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
the book is incredible. I actually just experienced it fairly recently, and the creation of the creature, the conversation you just mentioned between Henry Frankenstein and his monster is so powerful. And then he goes into this flashback about spending this time with his family. They mention this blind character who's been part of the movies, but they expand on that because the man had an entire family that he was there with, that the monster was watching, and he was helping the family in secret and hoped that perhaps he could be part of that family. The longing, the beauty of that, it's just so incredible. And I think the ways that James Whale captured some of that, with obviously he can't bring all of that to the screen, and he's not adapting it directly from the book in that way, but he still finds moments in this movie and in the original Frankenstein that touch upon that longing for humanity, that longing for acceptance, and the escaping that outsider status. And there's just these lovely grace notes that exist throughout the characterization of a movie Frankenstein. Is not nearly as much depth as what Shelley had, but it's certainly what you can do in a movie. They do a pretty great job of it.
Yeah. I agree. I think that my favorite is Bride of Frankenstein, followed by the original. And then I gotta say, Young Frankenstein. There's been so many tellings of this, though.
But I mean, is
like hundreds.
Like a Friday the 13th is a Frankenstein movie, is it not?
Friday the 13th Part 6 is a Frankenstein
at the very least,
movie,
yeah,
because he comes back to life with electricity. Although they're not trying to make a man, but
right. But like
they do bring him back as a Frankenstein.
The inspiration is there in so many different ways, and so many different movies have sort of a similar idea to the Frankenstein myth. I gotta say, one of the outsiders that kind of always catches me off guard at how good it is in characterizing Frankenstein. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein is very, very funny. Very, very funny. But then they also have Frankenstein popping up in the various different times that Abbott and Costello meet monsters. And the way that Frankenstein gets to be sort of this sympathetic character in comedy in the 1940s and 50s, I thought that's such a great evolution of this character. Because if you're going to choose between, Dracula, Wolfman, and Frankenstein, for one of them to make the baby face turn and become the secret hero to keep Dracula from killing the heroes, I think he's the best choice.
Yeah. Well, he's so, in the different movies, he's anywhere from a bumbling automaton to basically an erudite socialite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you can do anything with the character because there's no, sad to say, but bringing somebody back to life, after sewing them from a bunch of different corpses is not real. So there's no rules, and even between the book and the original movie, there's no rules. That, there's no hard and fast rules that, he has to have the abnormal brain or, anything like that. It's completely up to your interpretation. And I think that's one of the reasons that they've made this movie so many times or used this character so many times.
Yeah. Whereas the Dracula lore, the vampire lore feels much more set in stone. Like you have to do certain things or it's not really a vampire.
Yeah. But even with the Dracula movies, they're, some of the things that we think of with modern vampires now are based off of that 1931 movie, not the book, because the book is, it's told as a series of letters and it's not, there's no real lore to it. It's just about the characters. But when they made the movie, Todd Browning added in a lot of these superstitions from Eastern Europe. So, we get a lot of that from the Dracula movies, whereas the Frankenstein movies, we have the trope of bringing something back to life with electricity, but after that, all bets are off.
Yeah.
So.
I think the worst Frankenstein movie I've seen, I think it has to be what is his name? Where'd it go? I had it. Here it is. It's Roger Corman's take on Frankenstein. Frankenstein Unbound from 1990. Yeah. It's going to be in my book. This is so dumb. It's so terrible. But the cast is amazing. You've got Bridget Fonda, you got Raul Julia, Michael Hutchins is in this movie from NXS, and somehow they've made a completely terrible film.
Yes.
There's like time travel in this. There's like, I don't understand a lot of what's happening throughout what they're choosing to do in this movie, but it's absolutely wild and terrible in all ways. But I almost recommend it just for people just to sit there baffled at what they're watching. Like, why are we time traveling? Where did this come from? Why is Michael Hutchins here?
Yeah. I maybe that's why he killed himself. I don't know. I'm sorry, that was really horrible of me.
Was really terrible. But yeah, I love the character of Frankenstein. I love the lore, but Bride of Frankenstein truly is just it goes beyond, like, it's so unique and so strange that it shouldn't have been able to be made. Like, James Whale is given so much leeway to take a property that became so quickly valuable to MGM that he had the freedom to make this super weird movie is almost just an incredible outlier.
Exactly. Yeah, he was feeling his oats, and he was going to make a gay rom-com between Pretorius and Frankenstein. I'm almost convinced that that's what, his motivation was, to see what he could get away with. I mean, it was pre-code though, so,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was pre-code, wasn't it?
34? Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So, yeah, I just think he was just trying to kind of feel his oats and see what he could get away with.
Yeah, because I believe Hayes, the guy behind the Hayes Code, actually pretty much targeted James Whale. Basically just tried to end his career.
Well, Will Hayes was a piece of shit. So
he was absolute garbage. Screw that guy.
Yes. I'm glad he's dead. How's that for you?
Well said. Well said.
Thanks.
All right. Before we let you go, Jeff, we're just circling around to something completely different to wind down the show. What did you think of the Deadpool trailer?
Not what I expected, but what I expected. I mean, we've all seen the behind the scenes photos of Deadpool and Wolverine on set, in full costume and whatever, and I was expecting a little more Wolverine in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved it. I especially love the I know about pegging, but does Disney? I'm like, okay, when I heard, that they were going to do another Deadpool movie at Disney through Marvel Studios, I really, really, really worried about what they would let him get away with.
Yeah.
But, and I heard, oh no, they know that they have a moneymaker. They're going to let him go, let him do his thing. And, I was worried, but I can see that he's probably going to get away with a lot of the same stuff. So glad to see Leslie Uggams back there. So.
I love the cast. I love I've read a little bit about I don't know if it is a direct comic adaptation, but there is a comic book called Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. And I believe they've hinted that this is kind of an adaptation of that, where he's going to be going in, like they mentioned, there've been mentions of like the Loki set, where Loki has those various different branches of the Marvel universe. He's going to be killing different versions of those people, like we saw in Multiverse of Madness. And that's an interesting concept. At the very least, it's going to be better than Multiverse of Madness, but that's a low bar.
Well, yeah. Although I started to rewatch it the other night. I'm like, I gotta watch something that I've seen before I go to bed. So I put that on, and it's not as bad as I remembered. I'll just say that. It's not great. It's definitely not great, and it still has Benedict Cumberbatch in it, which is always a minus in my book. But I would love to see something like that. I don't know if they will. I mean, it's one of those things that at this point you've got a multiverse. It doesn't matter if you're killing off Iron Man in one. He can always come back in another. Let them do whatever they want at this point.
Yeah, it ought to be interesting. It ought to be exciting. It ought to be unique. I think Ryan Reynolds and the guys he's been working with behind the scenes have a great vision for this. And it's going to be a monster hit. It broke records on YouTube in the first 24 hours with the number of views of the trailer. And it's going to be an absolute monster hit. I just hope they don't screw it up.
I was at least 10 of those. So, did you see? Do you know who Joe Russo is? Not Joe Russo, who is one of the directors, the Marvel directors.
I know Joe Russo. Yeah.
Well, he said on Twitter. I used to listen to his podcast with Mick Garris, so I have a little bit of an affection for him. He said, "Am I going to have to watch Loki season 2 to get Deadpool?" It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke and whatever, because that's kind of, he just trolls Twitter a lot. But I think was it Bleeding Cool?
Yeah.
Said, Civil War co-director wants to know, do I have to watch Loki season 2 to get Deadpool? And I was like, oh my, this happens a lot. Like, he's always getting mistaken for the other one. And it's just like, oh God, you people should learn by now. But I just thought that was a little funny.
Coming up next week, Jeff.
Did you see the Wicked trailer?
No, I didn't.
Oh. I just want to. I'm not a big Ariana Grande fan, and I don't. She's a reason not to see it, as far as I'm concerned. But it looked pretty cool. And a lot of people were online bitching about all the CGI, except they're wrong, because they built these practical sets that are just amazing. So almost everything you see in that trailer is practical. So,
no, maybe I'll check it out.
Something to keep in mind when you watch it, and you're like, "Oh, fucking CGI." Nope.
All right, Jeff. Next week we're going to be talking about One Love and Madam Web, starring Dakota Johnson.
Oh boy. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to seeing that, so I might go see it tomorrow because it comes out early. And I have tomorrow off, so I may see it in the morning. Though I'm going to say this, all these people who are finally discovering the Marvels and how good it is, now that it's on Disney Plus, somebody said, well, what if we sleep on Madam Web? What if that's great? And I want to be like, well, it doesn't even look good, whereas the Marvels looked good from the trailer. This looks subpar. And aside from Suspiria and The Office, I've never been a huge Dakota Johnson fan.
I love Dakota Johnson. I love Dakota Johnson for one reason. She made 50 Shades of Grey and followed the rules and did exactly what they told her to do. Uh, and it's such a bad performance, but she feels bad about the performance, so I get it. But she said the line, was a butt plug, with the most conviction any human being possibly could bring to a line that makes absolutely no sense.
Well, I never saw that.
And I love her. I love her for that. The ability to, because nobody can deliver that line. That is just the laziest piece of bullshit screenwriting you can imagine. Nobody can deliver that line. She delivered that line. I appreciate it. She's also just got a great sense of humor about 50 Shades of Grey and everything that she talks about. But she was also great in a movie called Our Friend with Jason Segel and Casey Affleck. It's just an absolutely incredible drama that everybody should see. And so I'm looking forward to her, but I have not been impressed by the trailers.
Yeah. My favorite performance by her of all time was on Ellen. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like a great party. Ellen, you were at my party.
Fuck Ellen.
I know. No, thank you. But yeah, that
we'll have to
I'm
come
not
up with a classic.
100%.
We've not come up with a classic yet. We'll come up with something.
Yeah, not 50 Shades of Grey.
No, definitely not that. Although you do want to see her do that line.
I'm gonna have to watch it, aren't I? I have to find a streaming for free. I'm not paying for that shit. Like I did some Frankenstein.
We'll bring back Flick Chart next week. I promise. I know everybody loves Flick Chart, but we don't have time for it tonight. I've got to get going, Jeff. Thank you.
Have a good night.